Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome. This is the series called Courageous Conversations Over Coffee. It's sponsored by the South Coast Interfaith Council. And all through this past year of challenge and hope, we've been connecting with you to bring you conversations with people here in our area and across the country who are fully engaged in helping others, reaching out with creativity and courage. My name is Marietta Fong, and I'm a member of the council, and I belong to the Rolling Hills United Methodist Church here in the South Bay area of Los Angeles. We've talked with some incredible people throughout this series, heard their stories, and been inspired, encouraged, and informed. Today, we'll welcome Randy Lioz from Braver Angels. So we'll hear a bit more about Randy and the mission of Braver Angels in a few minutes. But first, we'll have a few tips from Cheryl, the council's office administrator, about conducting a successful conversation in Zoom. Cheryl?
All right, thank you, Marietta. All right, so I'm sure you've all had plenty of Zoom experience in this pandemic. So please keep yourself muted. If you have any questions for Marietta or for Randy, send them to Marietta through the chat, and she will bring them up in the conversation. There's also the ability to raise your hand, but that is sometimes harder to find, so the chat is easier. This session is being recorded, and so if you want to optimize your video for this, then make sure you have a light on in front of you and not a light behind you. And this is Zoom is always an adventure, so we request that you give us your grace and be patient with the process. And we'll turn that back over to Marietta and Randy. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cheryl. I'll also mention that you have the option to have a speaker view or a gallery view. Probably up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see that option. So this program will be about 45 minutes to an hour or so, and we'll first have some general questions and conversation, and then during the Q&A section nearer the end, you'll have an opportunity to send questions to me, as Cheryl mentioned, via the chat box located down at the bottom of your screen so that I can share those with Randy today. So Randy, let's jump right in with a few questions. You have a degree in economics and in business management, but right now, after 15 years in the automotive industry, you've been devoting several years, I think, to Braver Angels. So your roles at Braver Angels right now include state coordinator for Southern California and senior operations manager nationally. And until recently, you were the national director of online experiences. So let's start with a brief description of Braver Angels, if you would, and tell us what is the mission of the organization and maybe a few of your favorite offerings presented online these days.
Sure. Yeah. So the organization started in 2016 with a single workshop right after the election then. So it had equal numbers of Clinton and Trump supporters because we recognized that the country was going through this traumatic rift. And so our mission was to help people to regain an appreciation for their fellow citizens, right? And the ability to communicate productively once again with one another. We'd lost a lot of that. And so we wanted to help people get those communication tools. And, in that time, the crisis seems to have worsened dramatically, right? And so a lot of people are recognizing the importance of that mission. So we have been attracting a lot of attention, and a lot of people are coming to us saying they really need the skills and the types of programs that we offer. I definitely love the Red Blue workshop. So it was the original workshop that we did. And I think it tends to be the most engaging experience that people have with Braver Angels. But on a personal level, I really love delivering it as a moderator. I do moderate quite often. I really love delivering the Skills for Bridging the Divide workshop because there's moments there when people can learn a skill and really internalize it, and they realize how it can help them to improve their communication and even their relationships. And so you see, you kind of get the sense that there's this weight that's lifted off them because they have more of a hope that they can improve the way that they're relating to the people in their lives.
Oh, and I have to say that I have experienced a couple of other workshops that really I felt were very, very valuable. One of them was something called Families in Politics, and another one was Depolarizing Within. Tell us a little bit about each one of those, if you would.
Yeah, so we offer several what we call training workshops. So the Red Blue is more of a discussion workshop, but the training workshops allow you to have better communication with the people who are already in your life. And so the Depolarizing Within, it allows you to communicate with people who you largely agree with. But I think a lot of people recognize the situation that when we're in a group of like-minded folks, we start to demonize the other side. We start to kind of exaggerate our differences and say all those people are this way, or their motivations are questionable. And it helps to pull us back from that. Helps to do a little self-assessment and then have some strategies for when you are in those groups, how you can, refocus the conversation around some positives and the nuance, the complexity that, exists within each one of us. Without getting kicked out of your own group, right? Without them questioning your loyalty,
Right.
Thinking that you've been, the wool has been pulled over your eyes, you've been converted or whatever. So that's really, really useful for a lot of people. And then of course, our family relationships are particularly fraught when it comes to discussing politics because there's so much at stake there, right? And so they can be really reticent to talk about that stuff, or if they already have talked about that stuff, they might have experienced some really negative interactions that makes them feel like those relationships are at risk. So we have a workshop that's specifically focused on how to understand those family dynamics and account for them in your conversations, to recognize the different roles that people play within families, and how they contribute to either the tension or easing the tension. So yeah, people have been really enthusiastic about that one as well.
Yeah, and you keep expanding and offering more and more, having more and more resources available for people. I love that it's a dynamic and very evolving and changing organization. So let's stop for a minute and ask, can you tell us your story? So how did you find Braver Angels, and why are you engaged there?
Right. Yeah. So in the wake of the 2016 election and even leading up to it, I found myself really interested in trying to understand the viewpoints of the people in my life. And some of them believe such wildly different things from me. And I didn't really understand their thought processes. So I started having conversations where, I was probing and really trying to learn. And I saw it was possible, but we needed the tools and the motivation, especially because we're aware of those risks, and I think a lot of people avoid those conversations. So when I heard about Braver Angels, I said, "Wow, this is exactly what I was thinking about." I heard about it on a podcast, and so I got really enthusiastic and started to get involved. So I was first involved as a volunteer, and I've been doing a lot of volunteer work with the organization for nearly 4 years now, and it's been the most gratifying work of my life. So I've just deepened my involvement, and I came to the realization that I needed to make it the central focus of my life. And so I've recently joined the staff, and that has been just an amazing experience.
Wow, great. Well, tell us, since this is a South Coast Interfaith Council and we focus a lot on that, let me ask, if you don't mind, a bit about your religious background or your spiritual perspective and how that's developed, and if that's influenced your work with Braver Angels, or if Braver Angels has maybe affected your outlook in that area.
Yeah, I think there's a very big interplay between the two. I mean, so I was raised Jewish, and like a lot of Jews, especially in my world, from my background, I'm highly secular. I don't actually consider myself to have a religious faith, but over the past year especially, I've really been on what I would consider a philosophical journey that's given me actually new appreciation for the type of thought that underpins pretty much all of the world's major religions. So, these are ideas about, our connection to one another, the rest of existence, and actually that connecting force really being love. And so I was watching an episode of The Crown the other day, and so this was from, I don't know, a couple seasons ago, and Princess Alice, who is the Queen's mother-in-law. So she was talking to her son, the Prince of the Duke of Edinburgh, and they were talking about the psychological and physical torture that she had gone through to cure her mental illness. And she said, well, they did the best they could. And to me, it was an amazing act of forgiveness, an act of seeing the best in others, in their motivations. And it kind of floored me. And she had since become a Greek Orthodox nun and dedicated her life to helping others. And there was something that she said that made me reflect on myself. She said to Philip, find yourself a faith. It helps. No, not just helps, it's everything. And it struck me that she said, find yourself a faith. She wasn't exhorting him to come to her faith. And I was, as I was reflecting on that for myself, I realized that I have found my own faith. And it's not necessarily a faith in God, but it's a faith in good. It's really the goodness of people. I tend to be a very optimistic person, and I tend to see, I think, the best in people. And and also I have an abiding faith in humanity, I think. And I think that sustained me through some really difficult times and made me appreciate how faith in general can sustain someone. And so that's helped to, to clarify the value that a lot of people have for faith. And also there's one other idea that I've really come to appreciate, and that's the universal potential of redemption, right? So each and every one of us can be redeemed for the awful things that we might have done. I'm no saint, right? I have done things in my life that I'm not proud of. I think everyone has, but we can continue to grow and we can be positive forces in the world, even if we have iniquities in our past. And I think that's such a powerful idea that for me has just been so clarified recently.
Oh, thank you, Randy. We could have a long discussion about some of these things, and I'd love to do that sometime. Let me ask you this. Tying together the mission of the council and the mission of Braver Angels, have you experienced or witnessed some situations where individuals of different faith backgrounds have been engaged via Braver Angels?
Yeah, so one of the flagship examples of that is actually, so it came from that first, the first Red Blue that we did. It was in a barn in rural Ohio, and two of the participants, Greg and Kuyar. So Greg is a conservative Christian, and Kuyar is a Muslim immigrant from Iran. And they became really good friends, and they actually visited one another's place of worship. And it was just a transformative experience for each of them. And I think it kind of helped set the mold for our understanding of what those experiences can do. And so, like earlier this year, when so I generally hold a Seder for my friends who live nearby, and this year, of course, everything was different. So everyone was doing Zoom Seders, and I decided to do a Zoom Seder with Braver Angels people. And so I pinged all of the Braver Angels Jews that I knew, and I was like, hey, let's get together and put on this program, but everyone will be welcome. And it gave people a chance to talk about, their connection with Judaism and the culture, the religion itself. And for me, one of the things that is a strong connection there, every year at my Seder, I like to talk about the lessons that I take from the book of Exodus. And the strongest one in my mind that they repeat a few times is not celebrating the suffering of your enemies, right? So when Moses, when the Egyptian army is following the Israelites through the desert, and they cross the Red Sea, Moses, it is parted, and then he taps his staff. It comes back together again and drowns the Egyptian army. And the Israelites are rejoicing, and the angels are about to sing. And God says, no, those are my children too. And I think that is such a powerful lesson, and that is absolutely central to everything that we do at Braver Angels. Regardless of our ideological distance from one another, we're still human beings, and we still deserve one another's respect, compassion. So that's really central for me, and I think that was a really good chance to share that.
Oh, wow. That makes me think of something else too. Some people have a very strong passion for their specific causes, which might be very, very different from the very strong passions of other Braver Angels participants. So do they still find value in Braver Angels? Do they say, well, if I take energy from this cause that I am passionate about, how can I move things forward in a positive way in the universe? Does it cause difficulties sometimes? Does it work for people like that? Do you have any examples?
Right. Yeah. So I feel so strongly about this because I'm deeply committed to my own political philosophy and political beliefs, and yet I think that for anyone who is deeply committed to the causes they believe in, Braver Angels and the philosophy that we espouse can be a really motivating and productive thing to embrace. Not only does it make you a better communicator, but it can also, we strengthen our own beliefs by challenging them with openness to new perspectives, right? So welcoming being challenged in what you think, I think, is such an important thing. So if you are a dedicated progressive like myself, talking to someone who believes very differently can be very challenging. I think the same challenge exists for people on the right, that there's this fear of giving people a platform for espousing beliefs that you believe so deeply are wrong. And there's a danger in that. I think that it's understandable to recognize that. But if we shun people, if we shut them out of our lives, and we say, this person is beyond the pale, and I can no longer communicate with them, I can no longer keep up a relationship, then we further push them away. It can radicalize people, and we lose the ability to influence them. Right? We're human beings, and we of course want to influence people because that's how the world works. And so we have this rule at the Red Blue workshops that no one is here to convince anyone else to change their mind. And I think that's incredibly important because it recognizes that we're not going to change someone's mind in the course of a day, certainly, or a single workshop. It takes trust and a sustained relationship where you come to understand someone's point of view a little bit better, and actually have faith in their goodwill and their sincerity in what they believe in. And so that's what makes those connections really powerful, and that's what makes people influential. But also what's really important is, if we want to be influential, we have to be open to being influenced by other people, even people who we are convinced are in the wrong.
Got it. Okay, here's a different question. What about the makeup of Braver Angels membership and participation? Do you find that certain demographics are easier to attract and engage? And what kind of diversity is there, racially, social background, ages, geographic, gender, et cetera?
Right. Yeah, we definitely see skews in the types of folks who seek us out. Right. So the people who are coming to us without any prompting, they often tend to be bluer, They tend to be whiter. They tend to be wealthier, more educated, a little bit older. There's a lot of retirees who come to us and say, I want to help out and really get engaged now that I've left my career. And we've been so fortunate for that. But, it does create a little bit of a skew. And so we have to really focus on attracting the other types of people that aren't just naturally drawn to the mission. One thing that we talk about a lot is, we really need to reflect the country that we want to serve. We need all of those voices to be in the conversation. And so we do put a lot of effort into focusing on them. We have advisory council for people of color, people from rural areas, for Reds, conservatives. And so we put a lot of focus on that stuff. And we love partnering with organizations that have diverse memberships, especially religious organizations, right? There tend to be some more conservatives within religious communities than the people who naturally seek us out. So that's great. We love to partner with service organizations. Rotary clubs have a really great cross section of people. Partnerships are really important for us as well.
Good. Okay. And we may have some more questions about that. I want to ask you something else. You are an engaging writer as well as a speaker. And I'm going to put something in a chat box now, if I can, that would lead people to some of the articles that you've written. They're published on the Braver Angels website. So what motivates you to write, as well as putting your energy into wearing like all the hats that you've worn and do continue to wear at Braver Angels? And is there maybe even a favorite article that you've written?
Yeah. Well, I love writing because I do love communicating. It also gets me positive attention. And if I know anything about myself, I do like attention. So that's, I'm sure, part of it. And so, but I love when people engage with my writing. So when there's comments that come through our website, I always write back. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so actually one of the articles that I wrote last year was about the shooting incident with Kyle Rittenhouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And, I had the feeling that there was a pretty one-dimensional take from each side about what had happened there. And so I kind of dug into it in depth, and people were really engaged with that article. And so I appreciated the opportunity to write about that. And also that article gave me the chance to lay out the philosophy that I was developing about, the possibility, the universal possibility of redemption, and, what punishment is for, just how we see one another, and how that affects, how we relate to one another. So it was a great intellectual exercise for me. And the engagement that I got after that was just really rewarding.
Now, they actually had a session here in California where people were able to use that as the centerpiece, and you were able to expand on it, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, that was a really cool experience to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, I want to get to some questions in the chat box, but before I do, I want to ask one more thing, and that is something a little bit unrelated to Braver Angels, but it's another beautiful part of what I know that you do outside of the organization. I believe you marry people, don't you?
I do. I marry them to one another. Yeah, I'm a wedding officiant, and I've actually officiated several dozen weddings. So my first one was two of my best friends. I've actually married three couples thus far who are my best friends. And actually, one of those couples just had a baby like a week and a half ago. And then the other more recent one is expecting a baby next month. So I feel really good about that kind of stuff. But also just in general, my involvement with officiating bolsters my faith in humanity, because I come to really appreciate the couples that I work with. And, basically without fail, I see them as amazing people because my process involves talking to their friends and family, the people who are closest to them, and finding out who they are on a deep level. And it's amazing when you ask that question, when you say to someone, oh, what do you love about your friend? And people are rarely asked that, right? So the floodgates open and they tell you about this amazing, extraordinary person. And I have just loved getting to know people on that level. And so that's been really rewarding. And also just philosophically, I connect with people, even the couples who are highly faithful and want that to be integrated into their ceremony. I'm able to connect with them, with those ideas that I talked about, particularly the idea that God is love. Without fail, that is an idea that they say, yes, absolutely. And I'm able to work that, those ideas into the sermon about them. And it really connects with them. And so it's been absolutely so rewarding.
That's great. Well, we're going to put some information about Braver Angels and how to find out what's going on, how to get involved, how to get connected. But I'm looking for some questions in the chat box. The only one that we have so far is a website that someone's recommending, and then a request for a handout or a website. But the website we will share. Does anyone else have any questions they want to put in the chat to address to Randy? Cheryl, have you seen any that I haven't run across yet?
I have not. I have a question. Do you have any? I've got I'm teaching in my church coming up in a couple weeks, a lesson on unity. And I was wondering if you have any short exercises on unity or trust that I could incorporate.
Well, it's interesting because so the structure of our Red Blue workshop is put together very thoughtfully, I think, in order to build trust and perhaps unity over the course of a day, because we start off talking about stereotypes, where we explore the stories that we tell about one another, and how often we are boiled down to a caricature that is completely unfair, and then but that also involves introspection. So we say to people, well, is there a kernel of truth? Is, most stereotypes, even though they tend to be highly unfair, they tend to come from somewhere, right? And so let's explore that. What is it about your group? Is there something in the past? Is there a small vocal minority? And so that introspection, I think, is what really builds the trust. So when each group sees the other side digging deep and trying to understand themselves and how they can improve a little bit more. And with the fishbowl exercise that comes next, it also digs in that way, because we answer two questions. The first one is, why are your side's values and policies good for the country? But equal time is given to the next question, which is, what are the concerns that you have about your side's values and policies? And so that another piece of introspection that allows each side to see the other, engaging in good faith and trying to understand not only the other side, but themselves. So by the time we get to the third exercise, which is questions and answers, where people can direct very specific probing questions at one another, the trust within the group is built to the point where that's even possible. Because if we started out with that, it would be probably a disaster. But building the trust through good faith exchange, and especially introspection, I think is really important.
And this was a 2-day workshop, at least a whole weekend, right? When it first started out on land.
Right. Yeah, that very first workshop was indeed a whole weekend, and so they distilled it down into a single day for the full day, and then there's even half day ones that really just do those first two exercises. But a lot of people really want to get to those probing questions. They have those gnawing things on their mind. I've always wanted to know this. So that's what makes it a really deep and engaging experience.
Got a couple of really specific questions in the chat box. One person asks, How do you bring pro-life and pro-choice people together?
Yeah, one of the things that is central to what we do is finding common ground and identifying common values. I think it's so clear that people on both sides of that are highly concerned for human life and the value of life, the importance of doing as little harm as possible, and extending humanity to everyone. And it expresses itself in different ways, right? The pro-choice people are highly concerned with welfare of the mother and the agency that the mother has to make her own choices. But the people on the pro-life side are highly concerned with the value of an unborn baby. So there's clearly a shared value there that is just expressed differently. And so once you can help people to identify that concern, that value in the person that they're talking to, I think it becomes a lot easier for them to recognize that, these are highly complex issues, that there's, the choices that people make in that realm are excruciatingly difficult, regardless of which side you're on, right? And so once they recognize the challenges that one another are dealing with in terms of their personal morality and trying to live that, I think it makes it easier to extend them the good faith that they're sincere. They believe that this is the best way to go. And so let's talk on that wavelength and see how we can, come together on whatever we can agree on. There's obviously not going to be agreement on all topics, and we have to be okay with that. But we also have to accept that agreement that disagreement can be healthy, because it allows us to get to some shared sense of humanity.
Yeah. We have one person sharing, Kathy sharing. She said it's a laudable goal to get along with people, but what would you advise when a family member is perceived by others as racist or anti-Semitic? She said, we have a situation where in our family, where 3 family members, 2 of whom are Jewish, have accused another family member who's an evangelical Christian of being anti-Semitic and racist based on the social media posts. And they now refuse to be on family Zoom calls with that person, or even to see that person in person, and cut off not only him, but his immediate family. What have you heard people with situations, and is there hope for something like that?
Yeah, I remember hearing about, I actually worked with 2 sisters in the Central Coast area. They're twin sisters. And so they've been incredibly close their entire lives. They were in their late 30s when I met them. Because of the election, they stopped talking for, I think, roughly a year. And they finally figured out how to start talking once again. But you can see how, these disagreements and images of one another, the images that tend to calcify based on, things that they've said that we take a certain way, and can be incredibly painful. It's torn so many families apart. And so in this situation, it sounds like an incredibly difficult situation for the family. I think that, personally, as someone with a Jewish background, I can be, very sensitive to anti-Semitism myself. But I also find it really important to maintain communication with people who, even if I believe that they've said offensive things, that, cutting off communication in my mind pushes people away and can further, like I said, further radicalize them. And, someone said, if someone said recently, Loretta Ross in an interview, she was talking about a religious leader who had said something to her. She said, he told me that if you want someone to give up their hate, you have to stick around for them when they do. And I think that's incredibly important. And it can be incredibly difficult as well. And it depends on your situation. And I think that there's multiple approaches to this that are totally valid. And, you know, it depends on what you yourself can manage emotionally. And also different approaches can be complementary. So a few years ago, my brother and I were we were on vacation in Mexico, and we were in a bar in the hotel. And we were talking to a guy who, like us, was from New York. And he was talking about Brooklyn. And for some reason, he thought that it was okay to drop the N-word. And he was talking about how Brooklyn had changed. And my brother and I had two very different reactions to it. My brother just walked away. And I stuck around, and the guy said, "Oh, I really upset your brother, huh?" And I said, "Yeah, you did." And I was able to give him my perspective about why that is never okay, regardless of the company that you're in. And I think that the combination of those two things made it more powerful. You know, and I think it sunk in with him more, you know, just the gravity of what he had just said. So, so yeah, I think it is going to be both a personal and situational thing that you have to wrestle with. But, you know, my personal inclination is I don't disconnect with people, even if I find them to be toxic, because that's just not who I am.
Here's a good question. Someone wants to know, how do you find, or how does Braver Angels find, the groups of people who are willing to engage on polarizing issues?
Yeah.
How do they find Braver Angels? How does Braver Angels find them?
Right. I mean, it's really interesting, the dynamics that are going on within certain communities. So some of my most rewarding experiences have been with synagogues. So last year, no, I'm sorry, the year before that. So in 2019, I was working with a synagogue in Santa Barbara that was having these deep rifts in their community, and they recognized that it was unsustainable. And so we took them through a red blue workshop for their congregation, and it was cathartic for them. You know, the rabbi, the president of the congregation, the head of communications for the temple were all there, but just as observers. And each one of them came up to me over the course of the day and said, "This is exactly what we needed." And so I think there's a lot of tension that's happening within religious communities. There are certainly communities on each side. So I think a lot of Jewish communities tend to be bluer, and the Reds within their community often hear things being said from the Bima that they perceive as very blue. And so the congregation, they said to me, you know, some people in our temple, when something is said from the Bima that sounds that way, everyone in the temple is like, yeah. And then the Reds are looking around like, wait, am I the only one who disagrees with this? And they feel very alienated. They ask themselves, is this the right place for me? And so if there's no opportunity for them to talk about those issues, then you will start to actually lose members of the congregation. So I think it's incredibly important to address that stuff and allow people to talk about how they are feeling a sense of alienation.
So the more people hear about the work that's being done, the opportunities that are there to engage and to use what Braver Angels has to offer, the more you have people engaged and the more you have people spreading the word, I suppose.
Right. Yeah. So a couple members of that congregation had come to a red blue workshop on their own. And yeah. And so when they went through it, they said, wow, this could really help our congregation. And so that was how we got connected.
Let's see, we have another question, and I think we're going to start wrapping it up after that. But this one says, it's a question about COVID. So there's someone in a long-term marriage and one partner follows the guidelines, but another one doesn't, goes to indoor events with strangers with no masks, and now the family's exposed to what that person was exposed to, and it's causing issues and divisions in the extended family. What would work in a situation like that?
Yeah, I was actually just talking to one of my good friends about this yesterday because yeah, so he lives in the Midwest, and I think there is, there tends to be a more mixed community there in terms of political ideology, and I think that there's a lot of people who are more lax about the mask situation, and so we were talking about our own personal experiences, and he said, well, I have to be a little bit flexible about what how I deal with this stuff. And initially, at the very beginning of the pandemic, I was pretty hardcore. As a committed progressive, it was consistent with my ideology that I thought everyone should wear masks, and I thought the lockdown was a good idea. And I still do. I still believe in that stuff, but I also had to recognize within myself that I am not all one thing, and I have seen instances. Well, I've lived instances where I have not been as cautious about it because I needed social outlet, and there were social pressures, and so I was having dinner with my friend outside, and I was thinking about we were going to grab a table, and I was thinking, well, should I ask him to sit at a long table where we can stagger ourselves? But it seemed kind of an awkward ask to make, and so I didn't, which in hindsight I regret, because the very next day he told me that he thought he was exposed and he had COVID, and it turned out that was true. And so I was lucky. I did not contract COVID, but I recognized that I had done something that was inconsistent with my values, and what that means is I'm a human being. We're all steeped in inconsistency. And I think that we have to recognize that, and we have to, and even if we are advocating for policies that we very deeply believe in, and I absolutely do, we have to recognize that we have to cut each other slack, and that we are human beings and we can't be 100% consistent all the time, even when it comes to something so, with such high stakes as COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gotten lots of great compliments and questions in the chat, and one person wants to know if you can personally come and facilitate a conversation. You probably got your hands full, Randy. But
yeah, I would love to. So facilitating workshops is basically my favorite thing to do on earth. So while I do have a lot of responsibilities at Braver Angels, I still put in volunteer time, right? So my nights and weekends, I take opportunities to moderate workshops and just be as involved in that stuff as I can. So yeah, I'm definitely open to talking about that.
Randy, I can't thank you enough for what you shared with us today, because you have just really given us a good overview of what Braver Angels does and what your role is there, what you're passionate about, and also some very concrete examples that you've seen or experienced or heard about. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask Melia if she would like to share a few closing thoughts with us, and see if she has any questions or any comments for you as well. Melia?
Thank you so much, Marietta. Thank you so much, Randy. This is great. And I have a feeling you'll probably get more than one email in response to this conversation that you had with all of us. We really appreciate your time and know how busy you are. So thank you for that. A few things about the Interfaith Council that are coming up. I just wanted to share some events that with all of you. There's very similar principles of what Braver Angels believes in and what SCIC does, which is a lot about bringing people together. And that's really the premises of our work as well. And so we have programs throughout the year, and obviously last year and this year, most will be on Zoom. So immediately coming up, our Religion 101 series, which is every Thursday, last Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. now on Zoom. continues. So we have the Unitarian Universalist Church, and Reverend Steve Wilson of Pacific Unitarian Universalist Church will be our speaker. So it's a great way to just get to know about a different faith and have a one-on-one conversation with the presenter. So we have that coming up at the end of February. And then we have our annual assembly, which is this is one of the programs that we used to obviously do in person, but essentially it's an evening where we kind of recap our last year, what we did, what we learned, what we're planning to do this coming year, so that our constituents are cognizant of what's going on with the SCIC. We had to cancel it last year because it was literally like if you remember, Marietta and Cheryl and any of our board members that are on this call, right? This was scheduled literally like 2 weeks after it was the official lockdown of the pandemic. So we had to cancel it. But this year we're going to try to do it on Zoom, and we're very excited about that. It's a new awakening, Spotlight Awards and Business Meeting. Part of this is we have a keynote address by Shabnam Mugharabi, who is from the Baha'i community, and she's fantastic. If you guys aren't familiar with this initiative called Soul Pancake, just Google it and you'll see. She's the CEO and executive director of that, as well as a New York Times bestselling author. And it is actually on the day of Nowruz, which is a Persian holiday, like a new spring, a new awakening. So we're tying that in to this meeting as well. So there will be music, there will be conversations, we'll be honoring a youth, a woman, a man, a faith leader, and sage of the year, as well as we have special recognitions for COVID heroes. So we hope that you'll join us March 21st, 3 to 5 p.m. on Zoom, and all of this information can be found on our website as well. And what else, Cheryl? There we go. Thursday, this is for March, the coming month, Religion 101, the Episcopal Church. So we'll have Reverend Father Michael Fincher from St. Gregory's Episcopal Church, 7 p.m., same place on Zoom. So we hope that you can join us for that as well. And of course, the most important thing, at least from the executive director's perspective, right? As you know, as other nonprofits, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we are predominantly funded by your donations, and that is what allows us to have programs like this. And even last year, we were put in a situation where we didn't have any physical events, so all of our fundraising, it was really scary, but we managed to put on over 35 programs that were watched by thousands of people, and we have that same type of a schedule this year as well. So I implore you that if you're able to, if each one of you can make a $10 donation today, we would be so grateful, or more or less. But you could go to our website, scinterfaith.org/donate. You could just text help SCIC to 44321, or you can mail in a donation at 759 Linden Avenue, Long Beach. So we'd be so grateful for that. Every little bit helps as we continue our program, so that we can offer programs like this as we move forward. Anything else, Cheryl, no, that is it. So yes, so Marietta, if I want to thank you as well for always leading this initiative. Cheryl Benz, our office administrator, for always keeping us on track. And is there anything else, Marietta, that you'd like to conclude with, or I leave it to you?
Yeah, just thank you very, very much to Randy and for all the people who participated today, because, we're all in this together, and we need to keep these conversations going. If you have someone that you would like for us to talk with, we're always open to suggestions and connections, but stay in touch and be safe, be well, and we love you all. So thanks again.